Congratulations! You hopefully made it to the fantasy football playoffs. If you did, here are 10 waiver wire ads you need to make to get that championship in your possession. Everyone is going to be racing to the waivers to claim this guy with their #1 overall waiver claim. You need to get Evan Ingram. Trevor Lawrence is averaging 40 pass attempts a game, and yes, Evan Ingram has been a little bit off and on this season, like every other tight end we've seen, but he's averaging about 6 targets a game, which is not bad for a tight end. With this offense consistently drawing up pass-heavy attacks, I don't really see a world where Evan Ingram isn't startable each week. He's only rostered in 60% of leagues. Go pick him up where you can. Another guy that needs to be rostered in 127% of leagues, but is only rostered in 66%, is Donovan Peoples-Jones. This guy continues to be Deshaun Watson's favorite target in the preseason, and it's showing a bit this year as well. It might not show in the stat sheet, but he is the obvious wide receiver 2 and making a case to be the wide receiver 1 with Amari Cooper dealing with injuries. They also face the Ravens, Saints, and Commanders in their fantasy football playoff games, so that is a pretty good script for the wide receivers in that offense. But another guy you need to be going and adding is Isaiah Hodgins. As you can see here, his first start was in week 10 and he saw 62% of the snaps. His volume has been increasing every single week past that. Now, if you've been watching any of the Giants games, you know that this wide receiver room is extremely scary. They tend to play the wide receivers that are looking good and sit the ones that are looking bad, no matter the contract. Look at Kenny Golladay. He got benched off a massive contract he's getting paid. They clearly just do not care, but you can see that his targets and volume has been increasing steadily every single week. This is a guy you should be keeping an eye on in the coming weeks. He's only rostered in 4% of leagues. Go ahead and pick him up if you have the space. Another wide receiver we need to be looking at on the come up is Elijah Moore. Before getting injured last year, he was the wide receiver 10 in the second half of his season. The dude has a lot of upside. He saw 10 targets for 6 catches and 60 yards, and he played 82% of the snaps. Now, I do think we have to temper our expectations just a little bit because Corey Davis did leave early in this game with a concussion, which might have left him with more volume, but you can't ignore his upside and his target share increasing every week. The next guy I am extremely excited to grab off the waivers is Chigo Kongwu. You guys know I absolutely love finding breakout tight ends because the tight end pool is just so terrible, but he is leading the league in tight end yards per route run. His volume has been increasing over the past few weeks, and he saw 6 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown last week. If Treylon Burks continues to miss time with his concussion, he could be started as soon as this week. He's only rostered in 24% of leagues. Get him on your team. Next, I want to talk about all of the Texans wide receivers. Brandon Cooks might be closing the book to his season with a calf injury and his frustrations with the team. But this means you need to be sprinting to the waiver wire to add Nico Collins. But if Nico Collins does miss this week with a foot injury that sidelined him last week, Chris Moore is the guy to go to. Nico Collins has averaged just under 10 targets a game since week 9, and his volume is not going anywhere. If Brandon Cooks happens to miss the rest of the year, he is a clear-cut wide receiver 1. He's only rostered in 37% of leagues. Go pick him up, and Chris Moore if he misses time. We have amazing fantasy football schedules coming up facing the Chiefs, Titans, and Jaguars. They're an easy waiver ad if you have them. The next guy you need to be adding is DJ Chark. He is the clear-cut wide receiver 2 behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. He played 73% of the snaps last week. In week 13, he played 84% of the snaps and had almost 100 yards on 6 catches. And last week, he saw almost 90% of the snaps. You see where this is going. All of his stats are improving, and this is going to continue as he faces the Jets, Panthers, and Bears in the coming weeks, which are all bottom teams in wide receiver coverage. You can also look for a sneaky ad this week in Damian Harris. Montre Stevenson left last week's game early with an ankle injury. If this happens to be a serious injury, Damian Harris could come in and be a startable running back moving forward. Quick notes to keep in mind, moving down to the end of the season, Darius Slayton, he faces the Vikings in week 16. We all know that the Vikings are an atrocious defense when it comes to guarding opposing wide receivers, so that might be a matchup you want to target if you make it that far in the playoffs. Also, the Colts wide receivers play the Vikings this week coming up, and the Vikings are just a matchup you need to target. Now, I'm not saying I'm completely in love with Paris Campbell and Alec Pierce. I wouldn't start him over a guy like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but if you are in a deeper league and you need that upside start, look at them and target this matchup. And that is going to end the 10 waiver claims you need to make this week to win your fantasy football playoffs. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video coming tomorrow.